Hi everyone, I thought we would today look at this Verity Light Orbital. It's not really a restored fan, although the enamel paint's quite good. I've done a few things just to get it running, but we can have a look at it and see how they work. Now if you're unfamiliar with these fans, their basic USP was that they would oscillate in a radial motion as opposed to just a straight horizontal motion, as many fans did then and still do today. There are a few other manufacturers that did this, but Verity's probably the best known to have produced fans doing this function. In fact, I think most of the fans they made were, well, the dead table fans at least, were orbital fans. We'll plug it in, let's have a look. You have to excuse the blades, they're not balanced. Now they achieved that motion with a series of worm drives and a crank arm, which we can take a closer look at. So the first gear off the back of the motor is a simple worm gear. It's just got a slot in the end, and sort of the end's wasted a bit. It's got a plain end with a little slot in there. I think the slot is to circulate oil down that part of the bearer, sort of part of the gear. And then there is a vertical gear with a knob on the top which controls the on and off motion of the oscillator function. This is a bit more complicated. It has a clutch element in it, so when you rotate the knob clockwise to make the oscillator work, that raises the whole gear mechanism, and that rotating freewheeling gear here, which is engaged to this gear, is clamped. So that engages the oscillating mechanism. So when you rotate it anti-clockwise, the whole gear assembly drops, and it creates the gear here to freewheel again, thus turning off the oscillating function. The third gear, which is housed at the bottom of the gearbox, delivers the rotating movement to this arm. The arm will create the orbiting movement because it has a fixed point on one end. And we can take a look at that now. Let's try and get the camera to focus. There we are. Now you'll see a similarity in this gear in that it's got a kind of a clutch assembly similar to that one. This one has got a spring loading on it. So in the case of, say, the fan being jammed, maybe someone's holding onto it while it's oscillating, this is like a safety clutch, which will stop any of the gears shredding. So you can imagine the gears bind up. That spring there is going to compress, and that sort of lug, it's got like a small lug there, that will allow that gear to rotate around. It's a kind of a good safety feature, stops the gear stripping, although I'm sure some people over the years have managed to strip them regardless. Right, I've got all the gears back in the gearbox, but there's just something I wanted to add. It might be useful to people working on these fans, that they're between the back of this gear coming off the back of the motor and the brass cap that screws on the back, which has got a slot in it. there should be a red fiberboard disc which sits between this cap and that where the slotted face is and the back of that gear. Yeah, so there should be a red fiberboard disc of the same diameter as that hole that fits in there. Just thought I'd add that in just in case you have it missing, like this one's got it missing. You might want to punch one out or source one from somewhere. Another important point for people working on these is that if you're assembling and you want to test it, you will need to put the blades back on it. Well, basically you need everything reassembled for it to oscillate. When they designed these, they calculated the balance over this point here to be fairly accurate for that clutch which I showed you earlier, the safety clutch. Now if that balance is not as it's designed, that clutch will slip when it gets onto the lower part of the oscillation. You will find that the fan will be unable to lift itself up to the center point again, and it will tend to fall on the lowering part, and well, it won't come up past the bottom center of the oscillation. I thought I'd add that because it can be a bit of a head scratcher when you first come across it. You might think, oh yeah, the blades aren't on and the cage not on. I think I'll just see if the gearbox works because I've reassembled it, and you find it's not oscillating, and you probably won't be able to find out why. And then you'll reassemble it all and it will work fine. But that's what it is. It's the balance, the weight balance between the front of the fan and the back of the fan. It needs the cage and the blades on there to be able to achieve that. Otherwise, that safety clutch will slip because of the weight. Okay, I hope you found this video useful in some way. If you get your hands on a Verity Orbital, yeah, they are good fun. They're quite fiddly to work on, and it can be a bit of a pain sometimes. But yeah, they're sort of interesting. This is the light orbital. There was one with a thicker wire cage and a variable speed switch, whereas this has got a single speed. And there was the twin lever, which you can look out for, but that's quite rare compared to the this kind of orbital fan. But yeah, they're a good laugh. So there we go.